Meltzer and Tony. Since you're a football guy, Colin Kaepernick, why is he?
I think Kaepernick. I think MJ versus LeBron.
Okay. We can talk about that. But Kaepernick is an interesting topic. Why is he so toxic?
I have lots of feelings.
Okay, let's do that. Let's get you into that.
And there's Kaepernick. There's
and here's another possibility. What do you think? This is unusual. The Raiders playing in Oakland for a couple of years while they're, got one foot out the door.
Raiders and the fact that the Raiders might be the best in football.
Yeah, I know. That's amazing.
I like it.
Yeah, so we'll have some fun here. We'll just bounce around
rolling.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Always good to have you here.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure.
And it's so much better to be here than on
the phone.
Yeah, and if you got headsets, if you want them, just so you remember not to.
Remember to do this thing, like this.
You can do.
Yeah,
exactly.
So
you can do this.
Frankly, my dear.
Yeah. I hate that when some of these athletes, you put the mic in front of them, you have to fall over here, fall over here. Get that thing out of my fucking face, goddamn. Remember, Whitey Herzog knocked the mic out of my hand.
I have some very strong feelings on Kaepernick.
Oh, good. Okay. Let's talk about that. We'll get into that.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Here we go. Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, longtime sports radio personality. Today's show is going to be special because our guest is actually in the studio.
And he's been here before. That's right. Steve Baker, agent, who has represented a lot of pro athletes and has some very strong feelings about some of the topics we're going to discuss today. So we're going to have some fun times bouncing this around.
All right. Today, let's see, we're going to have the trivia questions going to be miscellaneous sports trivia. We'll see if how good Steve is. He's good at being a sports agent. We'll see how good his trivia is. How good is your trivia?
Well, I do have one question. I parked in the 30-minute bank parking spot.
Oh, you're safe.
And the show is an hour.
You're safe.
That's true.
Don't worry about it.
So don't tell anybody, but it's a fake ticket.
Okay.
It's not even, it looks like a real one, but no.
Or can we just say we're doing two 30-minute shows?
There you go.
Yeah. You just put a little note on there saying, hey, we're doing another show. All right, let's see. So this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, still providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding over 7.5% secured by Bay Area real estate. It doesn't get any more conservative than that. You got to check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. So when we come back, we do have Steve in the studio here. We're going to talk Colin Kaepernick. We're going to talk Jordan versus LeBron. We'll talk about the Raiders. And why is Barkley so? I was just thinking, Charles Barkley. He don't like LeBron too much, do he? Do him?
He likes to stir it up.
I think that's really what it is.
Charles Barkley is fabulous. On the game,
he is. He likes to stir it up. He's a provocateur. He's an entertainer.
And Shaq seems to, I don't know, kind of get a little bit too low. But
that's so
Shaq is the luckiest human being on the planet to be on the. You could read the phone book while on the air with Charles Barkley and sound good. So.
That's true.
All right, so don't touch that dial because you are listening to Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. All right. Switch it up.
Shaq. I remember when Shaq was a player. God, he'd give the most deadly, dull interviews you could imagine.
He is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, Shaq is. This is not being recorded, is it?
It is being recorded.
Okay. I'll tell you after it's not being recorded.
Nobody watches the podcast, do they?
Shaq is reminiscent to me of another personality that I've heard on the radio many times with another person who's brilliant, who made the other person sound good because he was with that person.
Really?
And,
okay.
We all know that person, so I won't say.
Okay. Yeah, I think Ernie Johnson does a masterful job with those guys. He just sort of the balancing act. Charles.
Ernie Johnson's brilliant, and Charles Barkley is great.
He is.
I think the rest of that crew. I mean, I also like Kenny.
Kenny's good.
But I think Shaq. I find Shaq painful.
Yeah.
Barkley, he was smart enough to travel all the time and do a three-pointer. Remember, he had that step back.
Oh yeah.
He takes a step, then he's take another step. No one would ever call it.
But Barkley's brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I learned a lot about Barkley with Twitter because when I watch games, I go on Twitter and I once saw that Barkley's collar stay was out of whack. I was wondering if anyone else noticed it.
Oh.
And I went on Twitter and I typed in Barkley collar stay, and there were like 50 people who tweeted, "Hey, Barkley's collar stay is out of."
That's funny. The twittering has become such a big deal. That's crazy.
Even El Presidente is doing it.
He loves Twitter.
Yeah,
He's
getting me nauseated.
Someone asked me, like I said, someone one time asked me if I tweet. He said, no, but I fart a lot. Okay, guys ready?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Bruce, please introduce our guest.
Yeah, Steve Baker, good friend of ours, agent for many, many years, worked with a number of football players and other pro athletes. And I got to ask you, Steve, right off the bat, this whole Colin Kaepernick thing, as we speak, he is being courted by the Seattle Seahawks. I guess Pete Carroll is a little bit of a different kind of a coach, and I think he appreciates what Kaepernick can bring to the table as a backup, potential backup to Russell Wilson, maybe the same kind of style. But why is Colin Kaepernick so toxic compared to some of these athletes? I mean, Aaron Hernandez, the late Aaron Hernandez, probably would have gotten a shot with some teams if he had been exonerated for that murder. A guy like Kaepernick, who has done nothing illegal, is like, uranium. What's the deal?
I think there's a few factors. I mean, you start with that if you're going to take an unpopular political stand, you better be good enough for the team to withstand the abuse they'll take for that. If Colin Kaepernick were more talented or were putting up the kind of numbers he was putting up back in the 49ers Super Bowl year, then the position he took would make him less radioactive.
Now physiologically or physically, what changed with Colin? Did he get older? Did too many players get traded away? What do you think?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think part of it is that Colin Kaepernick is physically spectacular, and I think on his raw physical ability, he had success. And then the league made an adjustment that took away some of the advantages he had, and he then didn't make an adjustment. Part of it could be that Harbaugh was no longer there. Part of that could be that the 49ers no longer had a defense that hit a marginal quarterback. The combination that the 49ers weren't as good over time, combined with maybe some injuries, combined with that he might not have been as good as people initially thought. I'm mixed on Colin Kaepernick because in one sense, I very, very strongly believe the importance of athletes being role models and taking unpopular stands. I respect what Muhammad Ali did. I respect John Carlos. I mean, what John Carlos did at the '68 Olympics, which was chastised then and now is the subject of monuments 40 years later. It's interesting. On Colin Kaepernick, I'm a little bit mixed because in one sense, while I very much respect his right to take a position, it very much bothers me that he took that position when he had a guaranteed contract, and when he doesn't have a guaranteed contract, he no longer takes that position. To me, if you really have guts, you have guts at all times.
Well, how's it going to work if he goes to?
He's already publicly said he's not going to do it. Which
go to Seattle?
He's already said that he's not going to do that anymore. And
No, I'm talking about just in general, like being a backup quarterback.
Well, that's the next issue. Another issue with Colin Kaepernick is I would assume that Seattle probably is interested in signing him, but they're probably interested in signing him for number 2 backup or number 3 backup money. I mean, Seattle is right up against the cap, so I would suspect they're offering him between $1 and $3 million a year, which is 25% of what he was making before. So there's not only the issue of whether someone's going to sign, it's whether he's going to be willing to play for backup money.
And forgetting the money side of it, just the idea of being a backup quarterback.
That's a hard thing for him, I think, to accept. But at the same time, I think, Steve, one thing that doesn't surprise me about Colin Kaepernick is he, at least is from what I've read and what I've heard, just in his comments, he doesn't seem like the kind of a guy right now who really thrives on all of the attention. He just wants to do the right thing, and I really believe the guy is sincere in what he says. Yeah, he's made some mistakes and he's put his foot in his mouth, but I think he doesn't need football that much. In football, let's face it, there are 32 teams out there, and there's not a lot of good backup quarterbacks. So,
well, you start with right there with Bruce is that it's so hard to succeed at that level that someone who doesn't want it that much, you question how much they're going to succeed. It is so hard to succeed as a professional athlete. I mean, the comparison I make is Ray Lewis. I mean, Ray Lewis, what he did was obviously far worse than what Colin Kaepernick did. But Ray Lewis, between the lines on a football field, was always playing like a Hall of Famer. So the NFL will forget what you do in other places. I agree on Aaron Hernandez. I mean, Aaron Hernandez had a terrible reputation before he ever became a star with the Patriots. In fact, that's why he was a later round draft choice. Teams will forgive someone's off-field if they believe it doesn't affect the on-field. The problem with Colin Kaepernick is the on-field performance went down, combined with that when you're the leader of the organization, when you're taking that kind of stand, it makes a team uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I want to emphasize on the other side, I think it's wonderful when players take stands. I just, I personally would like to see him take the same stand when he doesn't have a guaranteed contract.
Well, and it didn't seem like his teammates really were bothered by the stand either.
You know, again, as I said, I respect the right to I mean, the freedoms we have in this country. The thing that makes America special is that you have the right to sit down during the national anthem. I was offended by the pig socks. That offended my sensibilities. But again, I respect that's what freedom of speech is. But again, it's one thing to have freedom of speech when you have a $20 million guarantee in your contract. It's another thing to have It's another thing.
Has he publicly said why he's going to change his stance?
I just read that he wasn't doing it this year, and
okay, but it could be just out of respect for it might have.
I didn't realize I was being interviewed by Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah.
Well, maybe part of it is the fact that he's moved on to a different topic too. That sort of gave him an entree into the social media and so on. It's interesting though. Then you got a team like Cincinnati with Marvin Lewis, who I respect as a coach, but he brings in these troubled guys. Now he's drafted Joe Mixon, who is from the Bay Area, who's had a history of some domestic problems, and he's had a number of guys, Pac-Man Jones. So there are teams that embrace these guys, give them a second chance, almost like a halfway house. And Cincinnati has had some good teams, but they've never gotten past that first round, and he continues to stick around there. That's kind of an interesting story.
Well, I mean, it's almost like there's an algorithm of football talent and character. And, I mean, it could be argued that the Bengals maybe have gone a little bit too much where they get players like that, and that might be why they haven't advanced. On the other side, an Aaron Hernandez is going to thrive in a New England locker room where there's such a central character there that someone who's maybe a bad egg wouldn't have a problem. I mean, similarly, I think if you added a bad egg to the Warriors now, it would have less of an effect on the Warriors than the Warriors of the 2010 to 2010. Where there wasn't that kind of character.
No question. I mean, it's like you create a winning culture, which is an intangible quality. You can't quantify that with statistics, but that is so valuable. And New England has it. The Warriors have it. Certain teams have that.
There's certainly the great general managers and coaches figure out a way to meld. Players are not Stratomatic football cards. I mean, you have to meld their character. I look at the Warriors. I mean, to me, the Warriors are one of the best constructed teams of all time. And a lot of that is because when their biggest star, Steph Curry before Durant came there, when their biggest star has that kind of character, and you see when you see the superstar working harder than anyone else, it inspires everyone else. I think that's why the Raiders now have a core of great players, and so they could now add other qualities, and the Niners maybe can't get away with things they could have gotten away with 20 years ago.
How's Derek Carr's leg?
I am not Derek Carr's agent, so I don't know, but I think Derek Carr is on the verge of becoming one of the great NFL quarterbacks.
I mean, is his leg
supposed to be very in good shape? The good news was that it wasn't a spiral fracture. It was a clean break, and the rehabilitation went very well. And he's a young guy, so hopefully Donald Penn spoke yesterday or a couple of days ago about how I felt really badly because Donald Penn never, ever in his career, the Raider left tackle let a guy get in and nail a quarterback, and he just has a lot of regretful feelings about that, but he said, I'm never going to let that happen again. That's the worst thing ever happened.
But let's look at Derek Carr for a second. To me, Derek Carr could be like a Harvard Business School study of player development. His brother, David, was probably a much more talented quarterback than Derek. I mean, David was the #1 pick in the NFL draft, who was seen as a complete NFL washout. Both players have impeccable character. But David went to a bad situation with a line that gave you less protection than the imaginable.
Well, that's a huge. A quarterback is not a one position.
And if David Carr had been drafted by the Raiders when Derek was, David Carr might be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, when you have a good, strong line, I mean, that's going to make a huge.
Well, look what Kenny Stabler had. He had Jim Otto, Art Shell, and Gene Upshaw, 3 Hall of Famers blocking for him.
That's all he needed. He didn't need anyone else on the front line. Okay. We're going to cut to our first commercial break. Again, Steve, remember the rules. Don't answer until after we get back to break. Which tennis player has won the most men's Grand Slam titles? Like I said, well, this is miscellaneous.
You're going to give us a
choice? I like this miscellaneous.
You like this list? Okay.
You're going to give us a choice? You just
what's really nice is I can see the answers to the later questions. But this one I didn't see the answer.
Okay.
but I know it.
I know you know 6. Okay, all right, stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Yeah, I had a
Roger-
feeling you were going to
Roger
look over
Federer,
my
right?
shoulder here and look at my
Isn't
stuff.
it Roger Federer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be. I was going to say, it used to be Rod Laver. Rod Laver was amazing.
I think
Okay.
it was Sampras.
That's because it was left-handed.
And then Sampras, yeah. The lefty, that's
Those
right.
lefties,
Yeah. He was a finesse guy. Well, he had a good, powerful shot. Did you ever represent any pro tennis players?
No.
I think interesting.
I play tennis every day.
Oh, did you? Oh, that's great. That's great.
Unfortunately, my knees suck so bad.
You know who played a lot of tennis was Bill Walsh. He was really big into tennis.
I would bet he'd be great.
He was. He loved to play. He loved the mind game.
You know Jeff Greenwald from the Bay Club, right?
I don't.
He usually, like, you see him like riding the bikes where you were riding,
Oh.
and very nice guy. He's been on our show a couple times. He's now a sports psychologist, but he was telling me that he's a very humble guy, but he was basically saying, because his thing was tennis. I go, because I don't really follow tennis. I go, are you good? He goes, well, because I was ranked number 1 in the world for in the 30 and over.
Wow.
And then he says, when I turned 40, I was ranked number 1 in the world. And I looked it up, and sure enough,
Wow.
hey, whatever you
Please introduce me to him.
Yeah,
I'd love to meet him.
yeah.
Walsh and I used to go to breakfast like every 4 months together.
Oh,
Bill Walsh,
We
really?
can talk about that if you
Oh,
want.
sure.
all
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Those
yeah.
are good stories.
That is a good story.
All right.
Talk a little bit about Bill Walsh.
No looking at the other end.
At least I confess
X-ray
it.
eyes.
That's right. Now, you notice I haven't been to the Bay Club
I did notice that.
Yeah.
Why?
because we built a gym at home.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a little studio.
Well, invite me
It's-
sometime.
Okay. Yeah, it's really. I actually like it. I look forward to going home to work now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I got my 4-mile walk on Mount Tammin today, so I'm a happy.
Oh
camper.
yeah. Oh.
When you send me this part doesn't come in, right? Or is
No,
is this
no. When I send it to you, it's the full show. Only
Okay.
the recording stuff. Yeah. You ready? There you go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown here, along with Bruce McGowan and our special guest, Mr. Steve Baker. Okay, first trivia question was easy. Which tennis player has won the most men's Grand Slam titles?
And I'm going to let Steve answer that one.
I'll
We
say
both
the-
know.
I'll
We
say-
both know.
I'll say the first name. You say the second.
Okay.
Roger.
It's got to be Roger. I was going to say Roger Federer.
There
I know
you
it
go.
used to be years ago Rod Laver, and I think after that wasn't Pete Sampras.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hey, and Roger Federer's still playing.
Roger Federer's incredible.
He
Not
is.
not playing at the French though.
No. How old is he? He's got to be about 34 now.
I think he's at least 34. But
Wow.
he's taking off the French to focus on Wimbledon.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Wimbledon's a lot of fun. I got to cover the U.S. Open a couple of times, and that's fun too.
Kentucky Derby and Wimbledon are on my bucket list.
Oh, you got to go to Kentucky Derby. That
Have
is
you
a
been
fun-
there?
Yes, I did cover the Triple Crown in 1981, and
Oh.
Pleasant Colony was on the verge
I
of a
remember that.
bunch of horses that have come close to winning it, and he somehow, that long course at the Belmont is what screws up a lot of horses.
Yeah.
They're built for the shorter track, and that's why a lot of them win the first two and don't win the third.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Affirmed Aladar and Believe It, 1978. I
there
still
you go.
remember that.
Oh, yeah. That's going back a few years.
Yeah. I don't know why I remember that one.
No, that was a great.
The story of
great
Aladar
race.
would be
Yeah.
quite special. They
Yes.
always the eternal second place.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, Steve Baker, sports agent extraordinaire.
And we were talking a little bit about the Raiders because and this is an
Yeah, let's
intriguing
talk about
story.
the
The Raiders, Steve, I don't remember any pro team that had its foot half out the door. It was on its way to going somewhere. It was only going to play a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. I mean, this is unprecedented.
Did the Raiders do that in Oakland? And
Well,
when they went to LA?
They actually didn't get the go-ahead to move to LA until the '81 season was done. It was kind of a fait accompli, but nobody knew for sure. And of course, they got the sympathetic jury in Los Angeles. But this is unprecedented, Steve. What's the Raider? What is the fan reaction going to be like? Because they're kind of a cult team. They're not really a regional team, are they?
I think because the Raiders are good, they'll have a lot of attention. The Raiders might be the best team in football right now. They're that good.
Now, how do you know that in preseason? Or
I just look at
preseason.
last year. They
Yeah.
have they have one of the best pass rushers in football in Mack. They have a franchise quarterback in Carr. They have a Pro Bowl wide receiver. They're one of the best teams in football, and the Raiders becoming the way the Raiders have become the Raiders over the last couple of years is quite a story. Because to be honest, to some extent, I think they've had the success they've had because of the lack of meddling from the ownership.
Isn't that ironic? I mean, Al Davis built this team for 20 years. They were a dynasty, and then because of Al, he turned off so many people. Somebody was, Bill Walsh, I think, was the owner. And then because of Al, they built this team for 20 years. They were a dynasty, and then because of Al, he turned off so many people. Somebody was his trusty assistants fell by the wayside. And he was running the show himself, and it was kind of sad. It was like watching Norma Desmond in that famous Hollywood movie, where she's reliving the past. And Al, the last few years, I got to know him pretty well. It was really painful watching him go through this succession of coaches.
One of the surreal moments of my life was when I had to call Al Davis and tell him that Jeff Garcia didn't want to stay on the team and back up Jamarcus Russell. That was not a fun conversation.
Boy, I bet.
No, I mean, Al Davis, even at the end, knew more about football than any other owner in football. But that's exactly right. The lack of a personnel department really let the team, after the Gruden days, fall apart.
I got a quick Al Davis story I got to throw in here because just it flashed on me. I want to relate this to what we're talking about. The famous game, the Tuck game, where Tom Brady, was called for fumbling, and then they overruled it and said, no, it wasn't a fumble. And I was doing sidelines on the Raider broadcast. On the flight home, the flight was delayed because of the snow, and we were sitting on the tarmac, and most of the players were taking it easy. And they were upset, but they weren't making a lot of noise. Al Davis was stalking the jetway, back and forth, up and down, and you could hear him muttering, we got jobbed again. We got jobbed again. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, this guy takes losing hard. He did.
Well, first of all, the Raiders did get screwed in that play. And I remember for about 6 months after that, whenever you got a fax from the Raiders, it was a picture of Brady fumbling.
That's
right. I forgot about that.
I saved that in my. That's in my files.
Yeah. I was about 40 feet away from that play when it happened, and it was unbelievable. I mean, everybody in the sidelines is celebrating. Greg Papa, the play-by-play voice, is going nuts. And all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute. Coleman's going over to the sideline. Walt Coleman is going to consult. No, they can't overturn this. And I remember the anticipation on the Raiders sideline. Everybody was, what?
Yeah,
that was a surreal.
I mean, didn't they kind of invent the rule with that right then and there?
I don't remember the specifics, but what I do remember is during that period, the Raiders were on the verge. I mean, you think of how the NFL changed. I mean, that then led to the dynasty of New England. And the Raiders, for 2 straight years, were maybe the best team in football.
Yeah.
And the combination of Gruden and Davis, with them each modulating each other, the Raiders are on the verge of becoming one of the really strongest teams in football.
That was
and then for a decade and a half, it disappeared.
I was going to say, that was Gruden's last game, too. I mean, if they win that game, they go on to the championship. Gruden stays around, maybe, and who knows what happens.
It feels like a Ray Bradbury novel. The butterfly.
There you go. Yeah, that's true. It is interesting, though, how worlds turn on one play.
It's amazing. That is one of the most significant episodes of professional sports in the last 20 years.
Well, the quote, the one play, is right now I'm just immediately thinking of Kawhi Leonard. I mean, they were up by, 20-something points?
Yeah,
I mean, not saying that suddenly...
The bummer for me is, the Warriors are a much better team.
It's true, but I just find it very interesting that literally, right after that play, nothing for San Francisco.
I agree, but I also,
they still wouldn't have won.
The only thing that's going to derail the Warriors is Steph getting hurt again.
Yeah.
And people keep forgetting, Steph was playing on a sprained knee last year.
That's right.
I mean, if Steph doesn't sprain his knee in the first playoff series, the Warriors beat Cleveland, but Durant's probably not on the team.
Exactly.
Isn't that ironic? If they won last year, they wouldn't have gone after Durant. Yeah. They wouldn't be this great team. They wouldn't have all these new young players that they brought.
I suspect they would have gone after Durant. I wonder if Durant would have gone to a place where he couldn't put them over the top.
Interesting thing about Durant, nobody talks about this. If you are an athlete, wouldn't you rather be living, especially if you're an NBA player, wouldn't you rather be living in the Bay Area than Oklahoma City? I mean, no disrespect to Oklahoma City, but who would want to live in Oklahoma City?
Well, how many players live,
year-round?
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Think of the team that Oklahoma City had 5
Oh,
years
yeah,
ago. With
Ibaka
Harden and Westbrook.
Harden,
They were on the verge of greatness. It's just not a place where you'd want. I mean, Oklahoma City is not even a place you'd want to visit. I hope there's no people down there listening that are offended when I say that. But I've been there a few times. I don't know if you guys have, but it's not a place that you really, you take one look around, 5 minutes later, you want to get out of town.
The story that encapsulates Durant to me, and I totally respect the decision he made, was I remember reading in the paper last year during the OKC Warriors playoff, a woman with a son at an OKC game, I think it was game 4 after the Warriors lost, walked up to Curry asking him to sign her son's jersey, and she sheepishly apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, he's a fan," because he was wearing a Durant jersey. And Curry signs the jersey saying, "So am I." And to me, that encapsulates how special the Warriors are and how special Curry is. I mean, we have to enjoy what we have here because 10 years from now we're going to be remembering this and saying, "Remember when?" This is unprecedented.
And it's fun too. I get to go to a lot of games and talk to these guys, and it is a special group of athletes. There's not a bad apple in that bunch. They're interesting people. David West is fascinating. He has all these different interests, and Andre Iguodala is very thoughtful, very contemplative. Curry is the kind of guy you'd want your daughter to bring home. I mean, Kevin Durant is as squeaky clean as guy.
They're phenomenal.
Yeah,
I can't wait for these finals.
Yeah.
And,
Iguodala had a hurt knee, but he played a little bit.
Iguodala's played recently,
right.
but listen, the thing that's scary about these finals is LeBron. I think the Warriors are better, but LeBron is arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. I mean, I do think it's a travesty that LeBron has only won 4 MVPs. I mean, no, in all seriousness, I mean, think about it. I mean, he's now going to probably go to his 7th straight NBA Finals.
Is it unfair to compare? I mean, comparisons are always something that fans love to do, but is it unfair to compare him with Michael Jordan?
I don't think it's unfair at all. I mean, I think you give it to Jordan because of Jordan's clutch play. That LeBron is not seen as the closer that Jordan was, but I don't believe anyone in basketball history has accomplished what LeBron's had. I mean, think about it. There's not been a single of these NBA Finals where he clearly had the superior team. The Miami teams are overrated because he ended up, Bosh wasn't great, and Wade was good, but he wasn't Wade anymore. Yeah. Listen, the guard with Cleveland now is pretty special, but I mean, it's what LeBron has accomplished is unbelievable. And the reality is Cleveland without LeBron is a 30-win team.
Yeah.
And
I thought it was interesting. It's like because I remember watching Jordan a lot, and he obviously was great. But he was very talented, and you could see it. But the way LeBron plays sometimes, it's like a men among boys.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right? He just drives
right from the start.
Yeah, Jordan never was like a men among boys.
I disagree with you. I think LeBron. I think Jordan was. I remember Jordan. LeBron is so much bigger, but Jordan's athleticism was spectacular.
It was, but he didn't seem to be. He was. I guess I'm trying to.
No, I know what you're saying.
I do understand. Listen, LeBron is. There's never been an athlete like him. I mean, he's unbelievable. He basically plays point guard for Cleveland.
Yeah.
I mean, he's incredible. He's incredible.
It's the way he imposes his will physically, and it's palpable.
I believe the most underrated athlete in the world is LeBron James.
Really?
Because he is by such a large margin the best basketball player on the planet. I love Steph Curry. Steph Curry is my favorite athlete of all time. But just LeBron is so dominant. And
that's okay. Is the domination on that. Okay, here's our second trivia question, and again, I'm not cheating. According to NBA rules, how long does a player have after catching the ball to shoot a free throw?
Now, again, I am not a cheat, and that's why I'm telling you I read the answer on the back of your page, so I know the answer.
That's still cheating.
No, because I'm admitting it.
Okay.
And I'm not going to give the answer.
Okay.
How'd you read about? You have X-ray vision. You can read backwards. What's going on here?
We'll be right back. It's still cheating.
It's not cheating if you say you saw it and don't do it. It's not cheating.
Sure, it is.
You know what G. Wilder said? It's not cheating. It's charity.
Yeah. Try doing that in college on a paper.
It's like George Costanza. It's not cheating if you believe it's not.
I was watching the old producers the other night. Zero Mostel and G. Wilder.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
that's fun. So funny.
I love
That's our Hitler.
That is genius. Genius. Not too many people know it, but the Führer was a terrific dancer.
Well, I love the Seinfeld one where George is getting Newman to do something for him, and so he asks Newman. He goes, "Did you?" That was delivering Steinbrenner his meal.
Oh yeah. And, the guy who played Steinbrenner was great. You never saw his face.
No,
you know who the guy who played Steinbrenner?
No,
it's Larry David.
Oh, really?
Is that right? That's funny.
That was Larry David.
But wasn't his voice though, right?
That was his voice.
That was his voice.
Oh, listen to it.
Great.
It was clearly. It sounds like Bernie Sanders now.
But I love when I love when George's looking at Newman's like lying on his couch, and he says, "Did you deliver it?" He goes, "No, it was raining." "You're a mailman." He goes, "Neither rain nor sleet." That's the first one.
I got to actually interview him a couple of times. He was interesting because he was always around the press box.
George Costanza?
No, George Steinbrenner.
Oh, Steinbrenner.
And very accessible, but my God, when you talked to him, it was almost like you were talking to somebody who was using you sort of as a vehicle. You didn't feel like there was any connection.
Oh, really?
It was very strange. The only person I ever
It was funny.
had
Calculating.
Yeah, the only person I ever had experience like that with was Richard Nixon, and that was the weirdest.
I'm sorry, what I missed. What
You
Well, I was going to say,
to,
talking to George Steinbrenner, he was very accessible, he was very agreeable, but it was when you speak with him, it was almost like you were just a conduit to, oh, there's some people out there, and I'm going to, use you as a filter. And I had a similar experience with Richard Nixon at a baseball game, and it was the weirdest thing in the world. He's looking into my eyes, and he's looking right through me.
My sense is Steinbrenner is very Trumpian.
Yeah, oh yeah, very, very Trumpian.
Listen, anybody who's smart enough to die in 2010 when there's no estate tax, gotta hand it to him.
Yeah.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Anything specific you want to cover in this 13?
Whatever you guys want to do. Whatever you guys want to
10
do.
seconds.
You want to say what you're working on?
Okay.
You-
We'll talk a little more hoops. Okay. Have some fun.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Bruce McGowan, and our cheat, Steve Dowd. Just kidding.
He knows
Hey,
the answer.
as George Costanza said, it's not cheating if you don't believe it.
Okay, there you go. Hey,
And it's not. Wait. It's not cheating if I tell you I know the answer, and I don't give you the answer 10 seconds.
Well, then let me try to
And
answer.
did you know that there's no starving children in Africa? I don't believe it, so it doesn't mean they're...
Okay,
Okay,
Kelly,
all right, here we
Kellyanne Conway in the house.
All right. According to NBA rules, how long does a player have after catching the ball to shoot a free throw?
That's a good question. I'm going to guess 10 seconds.
That is correct.
10 seconds. Okay.
Now,
I'm going to guess that too.
Okay, very good. And it's not cheating because now you know the answer. So, I'm going to... Did you see my last question?
No, I only saw the 10 seconds.
Okay. Then I'm glad because it's a hard one.
Okay.
I had to keep one hard one for you there. All right, so Steve Baker, who is a sports agent, who's been on our show many times, good friend of ours.
I got to ask Steve a question. When you go in and negotiate a contract and you're sitting down with a hard-ass owner, these guys are obviously trying to get the best deal. How do you play that game, that psychological game of give and take? I mean, you have to it's almost like you have to know your opponent, know your...
A poker game.
Yeah, it is almost like a poker game, isn't it? There's a lot of psychology going on. How do you get to be good at that?
I mean, I think step one is preparation. You have to know your client inside out and their strengths and weaknesses.
You were a lawyer.
A
That's
lawyer.
a lawyer. That's
You don't get trained. You don't get trained in negotiation in law school. I don't think law school prepares you for anything except being in law school.
Gotcha.
But actually, the better the law school you're at, the less you're learning law. But you are learning how to think like a lawyer. Negotiating contracts is just it's experience. I mean, how do you succeed as a journalist? It's writing journalism pieces. But I think step one.
It's negotiation.
Step one is knowing your client and knowing who you're negotiating with. I think my mind defaults towards always looking at the other side of a problem as a negotiator, and I approach something at what the other side's perspective is, and then figure out what their needs are and what my needs are.
You gotta know when you're strong, you gotta know when you're weak.
One of the best deals I ever did was for a team that had just been sold, and I knew that the owner was cash poor. And so I structured a contract where there was very little upfront money, but a clause that triggered a lot of money being paid in the deal 6 months later, and it was fully guaranteed. So I ended up getting a client a deal that jumped out of the round. I mean, significantly higher than the players taken around him, because I was willing to have him paid 6 months later.
And 6 months is not a long time. I mean,
6
1
months.
thing if it was 6 years.
6 months is not a long time, and but I knew that for the ownership, because they were waiting for their first television check, it was huge. So it ended up for a real precedent-setting contract.
Very smart, man.
Well, you deal with you do deal with a lot of owners. Can you talk a little bit about? I know you're talking out of school here a little bit. Can you talk about some guys that are really tough negotiators? Not only you have to be prepared, but you got to take your lumps with these guys.
My experience is the more you deal with teams that are away from oceans, the harder they are to deal with.
Really? No, why is that?
I don't know. I mean, there's something about teams that are near oceans that are maybe it's more liberal and more creative. I mean, Midwestern teams. I mean, dealing with the Indianapolis Colts or dealing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, very very smart teams, but I found those to be very challenging negotiations. But the reality is that and again, I have a lot of respect for what they've done, but the real key to negotiating is having a great client. I mean, I did for example, some of the best work I ever did was for Jeff Garcia, but it also helped Jeff Garcia went on a run of 4 Pro Bowls. So when you were representing, he's the first player the Niners ever had to have 2 straight 30-touchdown seasons. So when someone has that kind of success, it gives you a little bit of extra leverage.
Good point.
Just imagine how much you're rooting for your clients, not only for them but for yourself.
I became very close with Bill Walsh during the time that he was with the 49ers, and we used to actually go to breakfast maybe once every 5-6 months, and there was nothing like sitting in the middle of Woodside at a breakfast place having lunch with Bill Walsh.
And there's no conflict of interest type, where it's like you get, you understand. You have a sports agent who is getting in with the coach, and it's like
having a relationship. I had a problem that he had cheese with his. I don't remember, but one of the most fun deals I ever negotiated was in September. It was in the summer of 1990. Actually, I don't know. It was in 1999, and it was right when my right after my kids had been born, and we were about $10 million apart on a contract, and we came up with a clause where if Jeff was in the top 3, actually as I'm clarifying, it was in 2001. If Jeff was in the top 3 quarterbacks in the league in quarterback rating, he got a $10 million bonus. We were $10 million apart. We created a bunch of different stats. So going into the last game of the season, Jeff was 4th, and in his last game of the season, he had a surreal game. And he averaged something like 10 yards per pass on the pass. And he ended up passing Brett Favre by 1/10 of a percentage point, becoming the 3rd ranked quarterback in the league. Now his deal was a special deal before that, but this deal made him the highest paid quarterback in football. And you talk about fantasy sports, sitting in the stadium, knowing that he had just hit a clause that was going to make an extra $10 million was surreal.
I wonder now. You knew that because I'm sure it was right on the tip of your brain. How much of it was going through his mind?
None.
Probably
he didn't know. It would have been malpractice on my part to let him know that.
Yeah.
That wasn't on his mind at all.
Wait, why would that be? Because you're not telling him to sandbag. Be the opposite.
Okay, malpractice might be extreme. And this is I'm already morally challenged having read the answer on your list. I don't think you put the added pressure. And I could also say this in all my years of representing players, I've never once been with a player where they did it for the money. They want to be rewarded for doing well, and there's competitiveness to be rewarded, but you don't get to that level if you're doing it for the money.
Well, okay, so I'm thinking about the NBA, and I can't remember the player off the top of my head, but he had an extra $500,000 if his 3-point average was like 40% or something like 40%, and he knew he was like 40.1%. He stopped taking 3-pointers for the last 3 games, and.
There's the famous thing with Ted Williams where he was at 400 the final game of the season, and they wanted to bench him, and he said no, and then he went out and had a 3-hit game and went up to 406.
Yeah. You mentioned Bill Walsh. What a fascinating character. I was lucky enough to cover those teams closely, but he was always kind of aloof from the press, almost a mythical figure, and I got to know him slightly and actually got to sit down with him and do a long interview with him about 6 months before he died. But you had a different relationship with this guy, and you got to know him almost intimately.
Oh, we would sit at breakfast and talk about Condoleezza Rice. He was he was so brilliant. He was incredible. He was incredible.
What do you think of Condoleezza Rice?
He respected her as a person, but didn't agree with her politically.
Yeah, well, she was an interesting woman. I went to school with her, and she was kind of an anomaly, to say the least. But they were at Stanford at the same time.
That's where it triggered. No, he was just an incredible man, and. Let's face it, he's on the NFL's Mount Rushmore, as I see it. But
he always had a chip on his shoulder, though, because he got to become a head coach at kind of a later age. He was in his 40s, but kind of towards the end of his 40s, And Paul Brown actually kind of hindered his career, even though he helped him out, and he was a great assistant to Paul Brown. I always felt that Walsh had a little bit of a little resentment there, and maybe that came out in his reaction and dealing with the media, because he was always kind of defensive with us in the media.
Well, for the audience who doesn't remember the stories about
Paul Brown
and
Since,
Walsh.
yeah, but he was at Cincinnati. This is after many years at Cleveland, and he loved Bill Walsh as an assistant. But when he left, he anointed a guy named Bill Johnson, Bill Tiger Johnson, as the new coach, and Walsh left and went to San Diego. Walsh he never really forgave him, and I think it was funny. I noticed this, Steve, after wins, Walsh was always kind of defensive. You guys said this week that we were going to get, have all sorts of trouble, but when he'd lose a game, he was fascinating because you could see it really tore him up, but he was much more reflective.
That edge could be part of, when you get to great success, that edge is what keeps you going. But on the other side of Bill Walsh is there's probably no one I've ever seen who was more willing to hire superstars to work with him. When you look at the staff he created, I mean, he surrounded himself with some of the best minds in sports, which is, there's so many head coaches that came off of his staff.
Yeah.
So one thing I've always respected about him is his willingness to hire greatness around him and not having a problem being questioned as long as he respected the people who were questioned.
I think, wasn't that the problem with Mark Jackson and the Warriors?
No question. Mark Jackson wanted to have
exact opposite.
Yeah, he wanted to have yes men around him, and these guys, you couldn't talk to them. You prohibited it, and they would freak out if you came up and asked them for an interview. He's very strange that way, and I think he took the Warriors out of their funk and got them into a winning mode. But Steve Kerr took him the next.
Let me tell you something. One thing watching the Bay Area sports scene in the next couple of years, I know John Lynch pretty well. And John Lynch,
the general manager of the 49ers.
The new general manager of the 49ers. Yeah. He's, to me, very reminiscent of Steve Kerr.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's an athlete, someone who has unbelievable personality skills, someone who has confidence in his abilities, but is very willing to surround himself with excellence. And I actually really believe the Niners are going to turn it around now.
I agree.
I think the Lynch hire was one of the really great hires.
I absolutely agree. I remember when they had the press conference for him, I thought, my God, I've always liked John Lynch, and this could turn out to be a good move.
To me, John Lynch is very reminiscent of Steve Kerr.
Interesting.
And you know why Bill Johnson got it instead of
Bill Walsh?
Bill Walsh.
Why is that?
Middle name.
Tiger.
That's
right.
Bengals.
Tiger. There you go.
And kind of goes without saying.
I don't think anybody remembers Bill Tiger Johnson anymore.
No, not too much.
Yeah. That may not even be his name. I may have forgotten.
You just gave him a nickname.
Yeah, I just gave him a nickname. No, that's interesting. The personality, to me, Steve, that's the part that I would think as a agent that you love, is you get to know these people intimately, and you get to know all their quirks and all their eccentricities, but also you get to see the side of them that fans don't see, that we in the media don't even see.
The thing about it's a very challenging business, but when it's right, when you're dealing with a great person, when you're involved in a complex negotiation, when you're dealing with special people, you sit back and you look up in the sky and say you're amazed you get paid to do this.
Yeah, that's nice.
Those moments are not always there because there are a lot of tough moments, but when it's right, it's incredible.
Is that something you wanted to do, though, from an early age, or did you just kind of fall into this thing accidentally?
I wanted to be an entertainment producer or agent.
Okay.
When I was in law school, I took a job writing game show questions.
Interesting.
In Hollywood.
Huh.
And my father was Ed Sullivan's attorney, and he also did legal work for John Lennon.
Wow. Did you get it all off the internet?
There was no internet. They had just invented fire. It's actually pretty funny because I have a good friend of mine who turned me on to this new concept last year called Pandora, which has been around forever.
Yeah.
But I only started using it last year.
Is that right?
But it's pretty scary.
Even I'm a little further.
I'm actually pretty good on tech, but it's amazing that I waited so long for Pandora. But
it seems natural, though. Then, I mean, considering your background, that this was something. If you look back at your youth, you probably thought that might be an area where
I was in love with the idea of putting together movies, and I mean I'm a big Broadway buff, and
wow,
my son and I speak to each other in Hamilton.
So maybe you would, if you hadn't been a sports agent, a theatrical agent.
I want to be the heterosexual Nathan Lane.
All right, here we go. And on that note, okay, who was the first Latin American born player to play in Major League Baseball?
Oh,
all right.
Good question.
It's not as easy as you think. Okay?
Yeah.
So again, here's our question: who was the first Latin American-born player to play in Major League Baseball?
Wow. I'm having a brain fart on this one. Brain freeze, I should
Brain
say.
freeze. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So stay with us when Sports Econ 101 comes back. We're going to have some closing comments. Don't touch that dial.
What's the year?
It's got to be way back, right?
It goes back.
Yeah. God, I'm thinking right around the turn of the century. It's got to be,
Very good.
Wow.
I'll give you that hint.
pitcher, maybe.
No. Let's see. Actually, you know what? I did see what position he played.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Yeah, I want to wait for Hamilton to. It's coming out here now.
It is.
It's here.
It's
It is,
here already.
Oh, I'm addicted to it.
Is it? It's an all black cast here too.
I don't know. I am not.
Because I know that it was in New York. It was an all black cast, right?
Well, interesting.
I'm just kind of curious as to.
Okay. And I was listening. You know what I was listening to the other day? Remember Jackie Wilson?
Yeah.
He was kind of like Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
God, I've forgotten what a ill-fated
He did
life
one.
he died at 49 when he was performing one of his songs on a TV show in 1975.
Is that right? Is that how he died?
Yeah, he was only 49. Yeah, he had a heart attack right on the stage on live television. Yeah, one of these dance shows like Shindig or one of these shows. He was really popular on those shows.
Wow.
Former pro athlete. He played a little
Did he really?
a boxer, played a little pro football. Yeah.
You sure that wasn't Flip Wilson?
Flip Wilson.
I
Flip
love
Wilson's still around?
I think he is. I love.
I don't
that
think
show.
Phil Wilson's around.
No?
Really think that? Oh, I love that
I'm
guy.
pretty sure he
Yeah.
died.
So funny.
God, Bill Cosby was so fun. Look at this.
Oh
What a
my God,
sad
the music.
story.
No, it's funny. My mother, my ex-mother-in-law, who knows Bill Cosby very well, is convinced that it's all made up. Which I think you're crazy.
How can you make up all these allegations?
No, of course not. Of course
I
not.
know.
There's
it's
too much
sort of
smoke. There's
How many women? Is it?
like over 20.
Yeah, it's one thing. It's like how people on like Yelp, right? They say, well, you can't really trust Yelp, but if you have 5,000,
I believe he honestly didn't think he was doing something. I believe that, which is
He
insane.
honestly doesn't think he was doing anything wrong?
I believe that.
What?
Okay.
Okay. Drugs
died-
and people.
Flip Wilson
drink?
died in 1998.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, that's right. He drugged these
I
women.
mean, he drugged them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to say, well,
Why did his wife stay with him, though? That's what I can't figure out.
I mean,
why did Hillary Clinton stay with Bill?
Why did Bernie Madoff's wife stay with Bernie
Yeah,
Madoff? I mean,
that's a good point. Oh, in fact, I got to see that.
yeah, I recorded it.
Well, we know why
It's all
Hillary stayed with
recorded.
Bill, yeah.
Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah,
We're going to
yeah.
close this bad boy out.
All right.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my favorite co-host, Bruce McGowan. Third and final trivia question. This time, I think we're going to stump the guys here. Who was the first Latin American-born player to play in Major League Baseball?
Got to go way back to the turn of the century. And I'm
That
thinking
is
some
correct.
kind of a
And we're
pitcher
not talking
like,
about 1999 to 2000.
I'm thinking Adolph Luke. Is that the guy's name?
No.
Chief Bender.
Chief Bender was actually
Well,
a
he was
Chip.
Indian.
Yeah, he was Chippewa.
Chippewa, yeah.
He went to Carlisle School for Indians.
Can you just move that paper a little bit so I can see it?
Yeah. I want this fact.
Who was
Okay, it was Luis Manuel Castro from Venezuela
Oh, my
for the
gosh.
Philadelphia A's in 1902.
Wow.
Well, I'm going to give you half credit for getting at
Connie
least
Mack,
to
yeah.
the turn of the century.
Interesting.
Yeah, but did
Connie Mack
oh
was
yeah,
the-
that's right.
was
Well,
the manager
1902,
owner.
he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
back then. Yeah, because he
Yeah.
did it for 50 years.
50 years. Nobody's ever going to break that record.
Oh, he started about 1901. I think.
1901,
Yeah.
1902. Well, the league began, Major League Baseball, actually, the World Series started in 03. But,
Yeah, and in 1911 they won the championship.
and
Right?
they won a couple of
Yeah,
championships.
like back to back.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so again, we want to thank our favorite sports agent, Steve Baker, for joining us yet again.
Great,
And-
great stuff, Steve. Thank
Yeah,
you
very
so
good.
much.
I'm glad I've elevated to favorite by the end of the show.
Yeah, because we've had a few on.
Yeah, we actually have.
We have. Okay, here's our thoughts for the day. I do not want the peace which passeth understanding. I want the understanding which bringeth peace. Colin Keller said that one. And people seldom do what they believe in. They do what is convenient and then repent.
I do what I want.
Who says that?
Who says I do what I want?
No, who said that?
I don't know.
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know who said I do what I want?
Everyone.
Everyone.
Now,
That's an American saying.
no, but the way you said it though.
It's some TV show. What is it?
Ricky Henderson.
I don't know. Some kid show.
Okay,
Cartman. Is that the name of the character? Cartman.
That's South Park.
South Park. Yeah, I think it's South Park.
Isn't that a cartoon?
It is.
You back to watching
I
cartoons
do what
again?
I want. Well, I get this from a friend of mine. He says, you always tell me, you're going to do what you want. So Bruce's theory or philosophy is, I do what I want.
Okay, and on that note, tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
So long. That's
All
a
right.
wrap.
There we go. There we go.
Good. Thanks,
Yeah.
Steve. Always good.
Please, will you send it to me again?
Yes. Doug Hendrickson was our other sports agent. I think he's the only